Amazing. Got it. So I buy it in my personal name with my mortgage, and then I transfer it into the land trust. And the land trust is owned by the series LLC, which is owned by the parent LLC.
That's right. Yeah.
Welcome back to the Money Seat podcast. Today, my guest is Scott Smith. Scott used to be a litigation attorney, but he has transitioned over into being an asset protection attorney. He's also a real estate investor, and he's here to talk about land trusts, private foundations, LLCs, and the right way to invest in real estate. Scott, welcome to the show.
Yeah, great to be here, Gabe. Thanks for having me on.
And I want to start at a really basic level. What is a private foundation?
Yeah, so private foundation is a type of 501c3 entity, like you would like a charity, right? But imagine that you could create a charity, but it's all just your money going into the charity. And then once it's in the charity, you can control all of the money to invest to grow the wealth of the charity. And then you, as the director of that charity, can take a salary off of that if and when you ever want to do that. So this is the nuts and bolts of why people use private foundations. It's because it's like having a retirement account that you can self-direct, but at any time you can take distributions out of it and not have to pay penalties.
And I've heard the phrase, for example, family office or trust or living trust, etc. Is that similar to what a foundation is?
No. Foundations are used for tax savings. All of those other things don't provide you any tax savings. They're used for like other purposes, right? Remember, when you donate money to a nonprofit, it's a tax deduction, right? It comes off of your AGI for calculating your tax. So let's say you're making $150,000 a year. You can contribute up to 30% of that money if you wanted to into your foundation. So for this purpose, that's what, almost like $45,000, $50,000 or so. So now that money is in the foundation, you can buy real estate with it, invest with it, do whatever you want to do, because the idea is that you're growing the wealth of the foundation for whatever charitable purpose that foundation may have. It's not required that you actually spend any of that money in furtherance of the charitable foundation, but it is required that you have one designated. And the big piece is that, say on that 50K that you contributed, if you're at, a 30% tax bracket, how much did you just save in taxes? You just saved $15,000 in taxes up front, right? So instead of having $35,000 to invest, now have $50,000 to invest. So you can see here that this is like one of the key things that you need to do is to save on taxes and to accelerate the path to financial freedom, is going to be primarily, first, it's saving money, as much money as you possibly can on taxes and investing in really good tax strategy like this, and then moving it into investments that are going to give you, ideally, high cash flow, high appreciation with additional leveraged tax benefits like real estate, oil and gas machinery, whatever the case may be.
Got it. So would you say that somebody who sets up one of these, they'll probably take very little to no salary from the foundation for like 5, 10, 15 years. And when they're ready to retire, that's when they would start taking a salary.
Yeah, right. Just like at any time, right? You build up your investing juggernaut, right? Because all the gains you make inside of the foundation are also non-taxed, right? Just like if it was inside of a retirement account. But with a retirement account, you're locked up until a certain age before you can get after it, right? Whereas what if you hit that number and you're 40? Well, do you want to wait till you're 65 to be able to get after, or 60 or whatever, right? 62 and a half, whatever the case may be, to be able to get at that, your retirement money so you can finally retire? No, right? So use a private foundation instead, and is usually much more effective and much more flexible.
How much does it cost to set one of these up?
Like about 5K, 5 to 7K if you're doing it with a reasonable provider.
And are there any states where there are limitations on them, or are there states that are better than other states?
Yeah, it's just like forming LLCs, right? You form LLCs in certain states because certain states provide you better protections and things that you might want. The same thing with like private foundations, right? So that's where it pays to look at what your situation is and find somebody that's either us or like us, that can find a state that's going to have, the right the right kinds of tax treatment that you're looking for, and also easy upkeep and maintenance.
Scott, I understand you are a fellow real estate investor. I'm still very, very early on in my real estate investor journey. I have a few properties I own by myself and a few I own with a business partner. But most people, when they buy a property for investment purposes, they buy it under an LLC, right? So let's say I own an LLC, the LLC buys the property. I believe that you have a much better way or a superior way of doing it. Tell us a little bit more about how you use LLC structures, series LLCs, land trusts, and how should one go about to set it up in a better way?
Yeah, so just there's two things you want to look at for asset protection purposes, which is why you're setting up LLCs or trusts typically. Is what you're looking for is a way to protect all the assets from lawsuits. So that way, if somebody sues Gabe, they can't get to anything Gabe owns, right? We don't want them to be able to get to Gabe's cash, his stocks, any of his real estate. And if Gabe owns that in his personal name, then Gabe gets into a car accident. And now all of a sudden, Gabe's broke, right? Because everything that he had got taken from him. So that's why you need to think about putting together the proper asset protection structure. Inside of the proper structure, you want to think about not just the protection itself, but also about how to create anonymity. Because one of the ways you're able to stop the lawsuits before they start, and also just have some additional privacy in your life where people can't find out what you own on the public record, is to use different types of land trusts or anonymity trusts that are really easy to put in place. They don't require any maintenance. They're really cheap to create and to use, but they give you good anonymity, and they also stop lawsuits before they start. Because if it looks like Gabe doesn't own anything, what do we want to sue Gabe? No, we don't want to sue Gabe, because then we just sued Gabe, but Gabe's broke. What are we going to do? Take Gabe's paper bag? That's just pointless. We don't want to do that. We want Gabe to have a big old pot of money for us to go after. So hide everything behind the trust. And then additionally, we layer in with that and combine with it, typically the use of a series LLC, because a series LLC will allow us to essentially create an infinite number of LLCs for free. And so what that means is then we can compartmentalize every single asset that Gabe owns. So that way, if they sue Gabe, they're like, well, Gabe doesn't look like he owns anything. It's all hidden behind these trusts and companies that Gabe's name doesn't appear on, all right, and it's attached to. And I say, well, we'll go ahead and sue Gabe anyway and see what we can find. And he says, well, shoot, it actually turns out everything that Gabe gets money from with all these investments, it's actually owned by this LLC structure, so we can't get to any of that. Like, dang it. All right, so we swung and a miss. Like on that one, we just wasted $5,000 to $10,000 to find that out. I says, well, what happens if somebody tries to sue like one of the properties Gabe owned? Well, grandma fell to the stairs at one of your properties, right? So she sues, and the insurance company says, we're not going to cover you because it's very expensive. Now, they might claim it's because of something else, but it's actually just because the claim is expensive. And, that's what insurance companies do, is they collect premiums, they deny coverage, and they got the business model that's about that, right? So what can grandma get in that case? Well, one, grandma's kind of discouraged because she can't find out anything else that Gabe might own. But that one property that Gabe has is compartmentalized in its own individual child series of the series LLC, which means at most Gabe's going to lose one property, right? Which is recoverable from. Take that in comparison to the fact that if Gabe doesn't have anything, then grandma or whoever knows the full extent of the assets, right? And they know where they're all at, and they know if they sue you, they can take all of it, right? Because it's all held in one name. It's all in one bucket. And so you need to bucketize and camouflage those assets, and then find a cost-effective way to do it, and a way that's manageable for your accounting and your bookkeeping and your banking and all of those things. And that's what we specialize in as real estate investors that also work in tax and legal.
And how does somebody go about setting up a series LLC? Like, maybe let's take a step back. What is a series LLC?
Yeah, so you get to create one company, and that one company then can create an infinite number of its own child series for free. Each child series is treated for legal purposes as if it were its own LLC. So it's a novel legal entity. It's been around for, I don't know, maybe about 25 years or so. Not that new. but really has most of its application inside of real estate investors. So it's just not really that popular, right? Most people don't need to be able to create an infinite number of entities, but real estate investors, we have thin margins, right? So maintaining a bunch of entities becomes really expensive. And we want the compartmentalization, because every single, property we own typically has a significant amount of cash tied up into it, right? So we're stuck in that position where this series LLC is really beneficial for us there. So you create a parent entity. You're going to want to create that in Delaware, Texas, Nevada, or Wyoming that has strong charging order protections. And then you can use that entity in any of the states based on the full faith and credit clause of the U.S. Constitution, just like using a Delaware LLC and then form it in Delaware and use it in all the other states, like we all know companies do all the time. That's all you're doing, but you're just doing that with the series LLC. But the key piece is you're going to want to have to form it in a state that has charging order protection, because your LLCs that are formed in states that don't have charging order protection are really weak, because they will protect you if somebody, grandma falls through the staircase and she sues and your LLC owns that house. That's great. She can't come after Gabe. But if Gabe got into a car accident and they sued Gabe, they could take his LLC, right? So that's why you have to have charging order protection, is because you need both protection from the internal attacks inside of the entity and the external attacks where they go after you and then try to go after the ownership of the entity.
Interesting. I had no idea that different states handle that differently.
Yeah, that's why like
interesting.
the state you form in is actually really interesting. So that's why you shop for, quote unquote, shop for LLCs and different kinds of trusts in different states, because you can form them in the states that have the good laws that you want. But then because of the U.S. Constitution, the other states have to recognize the laws of the other state. So it's a way you can shop for the most advantageous laws and then use it anywhere else in the country.
Yeah, super interesting. All right, so let's walk through it. The best way to buy an investment property. So I buy a property in the name of the land trust. So land trust buys the property.
Probably not. Yeah,
Nope.
you probably don't buy it in the name of the land trust, because you're going to have problems with financing. So you have to think through the angle of it, of what's going to be the cheapest and easiest financing, especially if it's a 1 to 4 unit property. And for in that case, what you're going to want to do is actually just get your conventional, conforming loan. You get 10 of those, right? It's going to give you your cheapest rates. And then you buy that property. You're probably going to actually buy it in your personal name, right? And you say, well, wait, how am I supposed to then use this asset protection structure? Right? It's like, well, remember, we're in a game of making money, right? We want to make money. We want to make it easy to make money. We want it to be easy to manage, and we want to have it to be low cost to have it protected, right? And so you buy the asset with cheap financing, and then after you buy it, then you're going to transfer the asset into a land trust. Now, land trust is going to be owned by a child series of your series LLC, right? So now it's anonymously owned inside of the land trust, and it's compartmentalized in the child series of the series LLC. If there's ever a lawsuit against Gabe, they can't go after that asset. If there's ever a lawsuit against the property itself because somebody got hurt on that property, then they can only go after that property. They can't go after any other properties. Here's the cool part. There's an act called the Saint Germain Act that says that if you transfer a 1 to 4 unit property into a trust, they can't accelerate the note. So that means you can paper the asset 1 to 4 unit with the really cheap paper with the cheap rates, and then transfer it into the structure, and you don't have to get commercial lending.
Amazing. So then whatever mortgage rate I got for my 30-year loan will stay the same.
That's right. Yeah. And they can't accelerate the note. So you're good to go.
Amazing. Got it. So I buy it in my personal name with my mortgage, and then I transfer it into the land trust. And then land trust is owned by the series LLC, which is owned by the parent LLC.
That's right. Yeah.
And I want to set up the LLC in Texas, Nevada, or Wyoming, I believe were the 3 states you mentioned.
Yeah, or Delaware.
Or
Personally,
Delaware.
out of all those, I actually like Texas because Texas doesn't have any annual fees and doesn't have any franchise taxes until you're making over $1 million a year, which you're almost never doing. If in real estate investing, you just don't make that kind of money, like in rents, until you're massive, right? So so it's a little cheaper and easier. And then you can have any of those LLCs too can also be owned by a trust. which means that you can actually own any of these LLCs anywhere in the country anonymously. It's not just Wyoming. Like a lot of people are like, oh, I want to use a Wyoming LLC because I want to own my LLC anonymously, right? Like, well, you can actually just accomplish that with a trust. And then if you use an attorney as a nominee person, either like a nominee trustee or a nominee representative of the trust or the entities, then the attorney actually signs all the paperwork, does all the filing, uses their law firm address for everything. So now your name doesn't appear on anything. And if anybody ever comes to ask about anything regarding any of those entities, it's all protected by the attorney-client privilege. So they can't ask about it and the attorney can't tell about it. It's the highest level of anonymity you can get. So there's a whole daisy chain of things to think through when you're trying to get to this kind of protection, which some people are like, well, isn't that overkill? Sure, but it doesn't cost you anything more to have the best, right? It's just being more strategic. Like it's just doing it the right way. And having it done the right way means that if anybody comes to sue you, think about it like from their perspective. We have a 100% success rate with getting rid of lawsuits. We get about one a month that gets filed. Well, it's because like when anybody comes to like sue one of the clients, like they're running into a Goliath of preparation. And if you're a litigator, or you know anything about litigation, or you know anything about warfare, right? It's the side that's most prepared, right? So you start running into it and you're like, ow, then I got this, and there's this, and it's all these layers of protection I got to fight through. I don't want to do this. This is going to be expensive. It's going to take me years. After all of that, there's probably not very much money to even go after because it's all compartmentalized. And so you can see this is where it gets effective.
Absolutely. Like they say, luck favors the prepared. So there you go. And
yeah,
maybe level with me here. How often are real estate investors sued? How frequently does that happen?
I mean, it's a really high probability over the course of like 15 years, right? So over the course of like 15 years, you're almost guaranteed to be inside of a major lawsuit, right? So the deal is you don't know when that's going to happen. And it's kind of like nuclear weapons, right? All it takes is one really bad one. So that's the deal, is that like, I had a friend of mine who was, he was saying, well, I'm not going to put anything in asset to do LLCs and all that. So I got a really great umbrella insurance policy, and I think that's going to be fine, right? And he lost over $3 million from a single lawsuit because of a breach of contract issue that went wrong, right?
Three million.
Yeah. So it's, sometimes that can happen from breach of contracts issues because something went sideways. It could have been just as easily could have been an environmental issue, right? That caused some major health problems for like people that made them have like lifelong care, right? Like a lot of things aren't covered by insurance. There's no such thing as insurance that covers you from everything. Insurance actually only covers you from accidents, like basic accidents. That's it. It doesn't cover you from any emails you send to people, text messages. Anytime somebody says that you might have lied to them, remember, they're going to lie about you lying to them. It doesn't cover from any like environmental hazard issues. It doesn't cover you from any type of business dealings around like lease agreements or any other types of deal acquisition. And you, as an individual, if you're doing all of this without any type of entity protection, everything you do and touch now becomes potentially the basis for which somebody can lie because something went wrong and they want to take your money because they're mad and they want somebody else to pay for it. That's really how litigation works. Somebody got hurt, they want to blame somebody else, then they sue.
Scott, I believe that you work for Royal Legal Solutions. It's a firm in Austin. Tell us more about the firm. How big is it? How many senior partners you have? And what does your typical client look like?
Yeah, so we work with average real estate investors. It's actually, my firm. So I started it 10 years ago. And right now we have, 4 attorneys, about a team of 8 paralegals, team of about 30 overall. It's not a huge firm, right? But typically we're working with is like the people that have, are sure they're going to get into real estate and want to have the right foundations on their asset protection and their tax, their estate planning and their insurance and all of the full gamut of things there. And then some people are quite a bit larger, right? We'll have up to 40, 50 properties. Net worths go from anywhere between $100,000 to, $15 million, right? So what we're always about is that there's a right level to start at, to start doing things in the right way, right? So no matter like where you're at or what you're doing, there's a right level to start at. It could just be like having a single LLC, right? You might not need all of the private foundations and the series structures and yada, 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 right? But most people actually don't know what they should do. So then they do nothing, which is the worst possible thing you could do, right? So we're there to solve that problem, to say, we can help you from the very beginning and then help you grow all the way up.
Another question I have for you is, what can real estate investors ask their own accountants or attorneys that they are already working with? And the reason why I ask is, usually my experience with accountants is they give you exactly what you want and nothing more, and they don't really ask a lot of questions. So for example, I go to my accountant and I say, okay, look, I want to set up an LLC because I'm going to buy some houses. And they don't really recommend any of the stuff you're talking about, right? Like, hey, have you considered getting a series LLC for each property? Or hey, listen, how about a land trust? What kind of questions can we ask so that the professionals we work with understand our needs better?
It's like kind of like saying the difference between like a doctor and a heart surgeon, right? Like, I got a problem with my heart. What kind of questions should I ask my general practitioner?
That's actually that's a good analogy. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but you're one in a professional, which I think is actually the crux of your question, is what you really want to be looking for in life, right? In business, is you want to find the people that already have whatever it is in life that you're looking for, that have already walked the road and built it for themselves, and better off if they were really bad at it, right? If it didn't come to them easily. Those are your best people. Doesn't matter what thing we're talking about. Those are always the best people to learn from. So the difference, if you're going to be hiring, if you're like, hey, I'm going to be a real estate investor and I want to hire an attorney, or I want a CPA, or like whoever, go find attorneys and CPAs that are real estate investors. Ideally, are the real estate investors that invest in the same types of assets that you've invested in, right? That's going to be somebody that says, no, I know the theory, I've walked it before, and I know the practical application of like how this worked, where the rubber meets the road in it. And here's what I can recommend for you, right? So I guess the question that I would say is what you should be asking the people in your life and your professionals that you work with, or the people that you try to trust, is questions that are related to that. One, am I sure that you have exactly what it is I'm looking for? Tell me about your story. How did you get there? What is that like? Have you really walked the same road that I'm looking to go down?
Yeah, and I think that's great advice. Scott, as we move toward wrapping up this interview, quick question for you. You were a litigation attorney and then you transitioned into being an asset protection attorney. How did that transfer come about? And what were some of your personal journeys and stories that led you down this path?
Yeah, well, I actually bought my first piece of real estate in business when I was in law school. It was a commercial building and a transmission auto repair shop that I bought for $10,000 in back taxes. Then I flipped it to graduate from law school without debt. And I was like, oh, great. Well, now I'm going to go be an attorney, be a litigator, and do what I'm supposed to do and be in some high-powered suit. And this whole time, I continued to invest in real estate until I was making more money investing in real estate than I was being an attorney. So I actually left practicing law to just focus on real estate investing. And then I hit my financial freedom numbers from real estate investing. But then I found out that it's actually a whole gamut of things after that. Because like my friend was like, well, I just lost $3 million from a single lawsuit. And I was like, holy smokes, I better be a lot more serious about what I'm thinking about with my asset protection. And I was like, well, these taxes, I need to get smart with my taxes. And then I needed to figure out my deal pipeline. And then I needed to build the systems and processes and teams so that way I could actually get my time back. Because I was like, well, the money is worthless if I'm just working a different job called being a real estate investor versus being an attorney. And I actually want to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro and travel and go to all this other stuff, right? So I had to build all of those things for myself, to not just on the investing side, but all the systems and processes with that and all the teams for it. And then the company, my company, World Legal Solutions, is just a natural development of saying, well, I'll do this at a slightly bigger scale to help people that are similarly interested in what it's like to be able to come to have like a single source of truth that works on all the different levels that's needed to guide from the investing through all of the legal, through the tax, and into the systems and processes that give you time back.
Yeah, and I think every single real estate investor or anybody who's thinking about investing in real estate should reach out to you, because I think some of the advice you have is fantastic. And as you yourself said, you walked this path, right? You are a real estate investor yourself. So you've seen all the war stories and the best and the worst, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I give away all the education for free too, man. So like I have a vault that we have organized where I have all of my courses on everything, asset protection, estate planning, tax, like everything that I know is all located for free inside of the vault. So like really all people have to do is just go into the vault and start studying what it is that I know. Don't have to pay any money. You don't have to pay $10,000 for a course. Just go study that stuff. And then connect with the team. If you want to save some time, you connect with the team and the team will, figure out what's going on with you and direct you like, okay, cool. Go study about the series LLC or the Delaware Statutory Trust or this estate planning, whatever your needs are, help guide you through the course. And then you'll know exactly what it is you need to do. You'll be educated on it so you can feel confident that this is going to be the right thing. And then you can, make those decisions when your budget is right to have somebody build it for you if you decide you want to do that or not. But yeah, man, it's I hope everybody goes and checks it out and checks out the coursework there, because I spent a lot of time putting in 11 ebooks, hundreds of hours of videos, everything I know, I have it there, because I don't like to teach the same thing over and over again. I like to master the skill set, put it into an area, and everybody that comes in, direct you to that. Just go study that. It's going to tell you everything you need to know. And then we're here for you to help consult strategically and then go build it for you, help you manage it so you can know it's done right and maintained correctly.
Amazing. And how can people find this vault, and how can people reach out to your team?
Yeah. So if you just go to royallegalsolutions.com, the link to the vault is just right there at the top of the page. And then there's also, there's videos. There's a video there right there on the homepage that has everything about how we work, what's the system and process of like you move through with meeting with the professional team, what the support systems look like, and the full gamut of all that. Tons of video testimonials from all the clients. We have like over 2,000 clients over the last 10 years, so you can go and see everybody that's there. We do free weekly coaching as well too, so you can even join in and be able to meet real clients that we've worked with in the past there. And my hope is that from that, that you have a full support system between professional support, a social group that's about, how to do this at a high level, and free course material to help you upskill your knowledge.
Amazing. And I'll put those I'll put those links into the show notes. And Scott, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today. Sounds like you're doing some great work over there, and keep it up, man.
Yeah, thanks, Gabe. Appreciate it, man. I hope everybody goes to royallegalsolutions.com and checks it out.
Awesome. Thanks. Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Money Seed Podcast. Please remember to click like and subscribe. It really helps spread the message to other investors, and it helps attract new viewers to the show. We appreciate your support. Thanks very much.